Hey now, you're listening to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast, and we started with that special song because today we are the trio. Back together again, the Podcateers. It's me, it's Rob, and Pitlane Paul is joining us. Welcome, Paul.
Hey now, I love saying that. It's quite amazing that even in America, I walk around and I see like, "Hey now," people look at me like, "What is this guy?" But it's the welcome, It's fantastic. And when we did it in the bar in Canada, it felt special.
I still have that, and I want to play that because it was. The fact that the guitarist played us in.
Hey now, hey now, hey now.
I actually love the fact that Brian's "Hey Now" is probably the worst out of the three of us there. But I think it's because you were like,
yeah, we were a couple of cold ones deep at that time as well from memory. So
yeah, we were. It was
But
a good night, and hope. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, can you remember that night actually? Because you guys were in the bar and I was actually in a restaurant. I think about 5 minutes away. And I knew I had to get to you guys. And I was around by, no one's really familiar, I guess, in Montreal, but is it Centre Bell, the ice hockey place? And I think the Cure were playing or something like that. So all the streets were closed. And the only way to get to you guys really was on foot or run. And the rain, can you remember the rain? My word. I got to you guys and I was so wet. So
you did
wet.
Like a drowned rat, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the hay now's got a bit of story. I like it.
Heck yeah.
Well, hopefully one to be repeated at some venue in the future. But yeah, so we thought we'd get you back on. Like I said to you, I'm utterly amazed that people find you interesting, but apparently they do. And we were looking back, we had you on you were our first guest on about our fourth episode. Then you came back on our ninth one and did the Brawn GP year. And we had a few requests of people saying, look, can we get any more insights into the world of F1 from Pitlane Paul? So you agreed to come on. We're going to do the normal thing. Quick, you're going to join us through the news and social roundup, which isn't really that big this week. Then we're going to
it may not be big in terms of numbers, but it's big in terms of discussion, right?
Oh, yeah. But then the main bit will be kind of open mic with Pitlane Paul. We've kind of flagged out some things we'd like to get your view on. Brian's come up with an amazing feature for us to work on with you at the end, and then we'll do a Hungary preview.
A disaster.
And that'll be that. I'm just going to quickly mix up the order here. I'm going to go in reverse on what I wrote, Brian. Sorry, but we got to fess up here, Paul. We had not listened to your review when we recorded last week, so we just did a generic. Oh, thanks, Paul. That was amazing. Now, what you said in there, I'd meant to bring up, so I'm going to bring it up with you now.
If you're going to bring the national anthem, then this podcast is over.
What was that? What was it?
My
you know when you cringe on behalf of other people, like massively, as when that saxophone started up, and I'm like, isn't he an actor? And then that happened. Oh my gosh!
Have you got it?
No, I don't even want to go and listen to it again.
He wouldn't let me download it, so he said no.
Oh god, move on. For the love of it, that's up there with poor Ricard in the grand scheme of bad things in my life. Really.
Am I allowed to ask you, is there a general consensus in the paddock? Are you all watching it? Are you all kind of nudging each other and going, what the hell's this? Or does everyone smiling?
No, you can't escape it. So, as a team, you always respect the national anthem. So a lot of people said the one in Austria was quite bad. I really liked it. It was a full orchestra. That was good. But yeah, the Silverstone one, I'm going to get so emotional. It's the British Grand Prix. There's so many people watching it, and it's the biggest event in the UK by a long way. And I just think a national anthem is something that is an identity. It's something you're proud of. And whether you hear the Dutch national anthem a couple of times a season, or whether you hear the Austrian one because of Red Bull, like when we used to have the German one with Schumacher or Vettel, it was still, you still respect the national anthem. So I don't understand why these people have to keep changing them or have to keep doing an alternative version of a national anthem. For me, it's wrong. Whether it's, United States, Mexico, I mean, we can ignore France. Whether it's like, a nation like that.
Bye-bye, French listeners.
No, we love France, just not pouring. Yeah, it's the national anthem. You have to do it properly. It's for me, it's such a symbol of where you're racing. So
Yeah.
to do what they did,
Well, I
oh,
don't understand. So here, just we'll let it go after this, but help me understand. Damian Lewis is an actor. Does he pretend to be a singer?
he actually was. So he was. There is a bit more to the story. There was a band playing in the paddock each day during in between sessions, and he actually plays in a band, and they were playing in the paddock. I briefly caught a little bit of it, not much, but they sounded quite good, and I think he can sing. But I don't
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
I'm
Let's moving on.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm going to continue going in reverse from how we wrote it because I want to leave the big one to the end. So, little piece that caught the eye was Alpine promote Bruno Famin. Probably you don't say it that way. To the vice president of Alpine Motorsports. That means he's now in charge of all motorsport, including Formula One. So now he's got Otmar reporting to him, which sounds like a bit of a demotion or a bit of a down. They've kind of squeezed Otmar down a bit because now Otmar's not reporting into the CEO Laurent Rossi anymore. He's reporting into this new dude. But does that really mean a great hill of beans in the world of team organizations, Paul, or is it just a nothing burger?
I'd say it was a nothing burger. I think it depends how they want to structure. I mean, Otmar is a fantastic human being, but yeah, it depends how they want to. I wouldn't read too much into that. And the trouble is, of those sort of things, the media will always make something more of that story than they need to. But for me personally, I would say there's nothing to worry about. It's fine. It's motor racing. You know, we
It's
have we Alfa Romeo. We have Andreas running the team, and Alessandro being the face of the team. So it's the same thing, really. It's just
yeah.
another name.
Brian, do you want to lead us on the big headline of this week?
I do. So, as you know, I love sounds. I mean, I've read. So I cannot wait until the Alpha Tauri and the Haas are battling, and we hear this coming over the team radio. Of course, that's Danny Rick back on the grid, pronouncing Nico Hülkenberg correctly. And yeah, the big news and actually, I hate to do this. God, I hate this. This hurts. We had talked about Nick and the risk on his seat, but last week, mere days before this happened, Rob predicted. He said, "I think it's going to happen soon. I think it's De Vries, and I think it's Ricardo going in as a little bit in the kick in the pants for Checo." And Rob, you were right. I hate to say it, and your timing was really what I'm talking about. A lot of people could have seen maybe this coming, but you nailed the timing. But man, just really good.
And we also, when we had Rob Reed on, like back in episode, well, I don't even know when it was weeks ago, we kind of all foreshadowed this as well, that we thought that it didn't make sense for them to drop Checo for Danny Rick because you tend to do that big change like that at the end of a season. So maybe if you want to light a fire on Checo and say you got half a season to prove that you deserve to stay in that seat and give Danny Rick a chance, then maybe. But what do we know? We're on the outside talking into mics. How did it go down on your side of things, Paul?
Uh, yeah, it's no shock, but I mean, I like Nick. He's a great guy. I feel really sorry for him, and if I'm being completely honest, I might be wrong. You know, Brian, you're the stat man. How does he compare to Yuki this year? Because in my opinion, Yuki's not set the world on fire. So I think you've got two drivers who, you know, I mean, Yuki's obviously massive appeal because Honda. I mean, I would say with the greatest of respects, and this nothing what I say is aimed at any driver's performance, but you got Yuki, who's obviously really key for the relationship with Honda and the Honda engine. Obviously, even though it's a Red Bull engine slash stroke, Honda is still pretty much powered. You know, there's a lot of still Honda there. So I do feel a little bit sorry for De Vries. I don't really know without looking how he's compared to Yuki. I would also say that bringing back Danny Rick, there's so many drivers in Formula Two who, even on the Red Bull calendar, who I think also could and should have been in for decent shout. I think there is a little bit in there that's a bit of a kick to Perez, but I mean, Daniel Ricciardo, he's not Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher. You know, he's not exactly a guy. You know, how many world championships has he won? How many times can you say Danny Rick has gone out there and dominated races start to finish? And I'm not discrediting the guy, but it's there's something more to that, I think. But I think there's a lot of drivers who could really have stepped up from F2 also into that role.
So I was like grinning like crazy there, and I wish I'd written it down, and stupid me, I didn't. But I did the exact same research that you're kind of saying. I was like, well, how I always think about you can't compare all three rookies because they're all in different machinery. So Oscar is obviously beating the pants off Logan and De Vries because I think he's in a much better car. However, you always look at teammate to teammate. So Piastri's kind of gone toe to toe with Lando. Yes, Lando's got better results, but Piastri's up there and kind of keeping him honest. The gap to Alex and Logan is quite wide actually when you look at points and finishing positions. And then because of I just got caught up in the Yuki hype train, I went to go and look at Yuki and thinking he's scored all these points and has been taking that AlphaTauri to places it shouldn't be, and he hasn't. He does have 2 points, but his average finishing position is like about 1 or 2 point positions ahead of De Vries, which didn't. I was expecting to almost be reading like a Latifi set of stats for De Vries, like always 20th. Yuki up at about say 11th or 12th, and that was a massive delta, but it really isn't. It doesn't sound fair when you kind of look at the stats.
He did. So here's the thing, and like you wonder how much bias is built early in the year because Yuki had that run of 10th and 11 places where he had like 5 races where he was always 10th or 11th, and it started last season, went into this season, so we had like 4 or 5 races to start the year. He was always either that's where he got the points, and then was 11th the other couple times. And I wonder how much like. I know it's the sort of the opposite of recency bias, but like beginning of the year bias, where people say, "All right, I see what I got there," and then they kind of stop paying attention to him, swearing into the microphone the rest of the time and making some mistakes and going off and dive bombing corners. And I mean, there were certain things he did. I agree with you, Rob. It felt to me like Nick really started the year. He had some really bad times. Baku was horrible the entire sprint weekend. He had some other situations where he was just spinning. He made some rookie mistakes. But, yeah, it does feel a little early, especially for a guy who's proven himself in so many categories. But that said, if you're worried about Checo and you're worried about your main team and you have 2 other seats, why wouldn't you put someone in to kind of get the fire going under Checo and see what you have? And the question I'd have, Paul, is Danny Rick the benchmark for Yuki, or is Yuki the benchmark for Danny Rick? Like, who's going places here? Are they trying to get Yuki up to Red Bull in Checo's spot, or are they doing this for Danny Rick? And who's the measuring stick that they believe they know something about?
That's a great question. I would be very surprised, and I don't know, but I'm going to suggest that Ricciardo is not going to do any better than De Vries. And there's a few reasons, and one of them mainly is the car. The car's not great. I think Yuki is a little fighter. Again, for the Japanese side of things, I think Yuki is valuable for the sport. He's valuable for the team, and I think there's a little bit of that in the reason why Ricciardo's now come back in. There's a little bit of the marketing, a little bit of the commercial side of it as well. Whereas if you put Ricciardo or Nick de Vries, from a marketing perspective, you're going to get a lot more success with Daniel, which is fair. I would say, I mean, you've got to look and think, if you look at that team, Ricciardo's the race winner, you've got to say Yuki's got to match Ricciardo. But I think the reality is Ricciardo's going to be trying to keep up with Yuki for at least the next 2 or 3 races. Then you've got the summer break. He can blast the hell at the simulator. I'm quite sure he's doing that anyway. That's part of his role with Red Bull. But is Ricciardo the answer to that team's problems? I personally think he isn't. And I see it personally as a commercial step up rather than a racing step up, if that makes sense. And that's not meant any discredit to Ricciardo, by the way. I just don't see at the moment where he's not going to come in and score points every weekend.
Well, that's a good point. That's right. Rob, what are you expecting like going forward? So Paul kind of gave his thoughts. You think we'll see, and maybe we have to give Danny Rick a few races. As Paul said, the break's in 3. So what do we expect? Coming out of break in your who's out qualifying who? Who's out pointing who? Danny Rick or Yuki?
Car's a bag of bolts, I think. So I don't expect them to be doing. Yuki's not magically going to get any better. So if we say Yuki's been kind of hovering around the early doors, 11th to 12th, recently kind of thought 13th to 14th, I think Danny Rick is going to beat him in like for like machinery, but not like by 5-10 places. He's going to be onesie twosies. So I think out of the break, Danny Rick takes 3 races to settle in, and then he's just marginally better than Yuki. I think for the rest of the season is my gut feel. Gut might be wrong. Anywho, just to wrap up news and social before we open the video vault, there's one big hot topic that we have to take to Paul. Now, a lot of people thought that one of the biggest snubbings on the grid this weekend was Martin Brundle and the actress whose name escapes me, but we're not going to pick the bones out of that one. An even bigger snubbing was listener Andy, who sent in his trackside deets last week. Desperately tried to get an autograph from Pitlane Paul, and it sounds like the request went unrequited. So what happened, Paul?
No, I did see him. He was shouting out. The trouble is when I'm out there, I'm waiting for Valtteri to come. So like I've got WhatsApp live location. We're not that technologically, that's the right word. We're not that advanced in all of this technology. So we just have WhatsApp live location. So I track this driver. So I knew Valtteri was coming in. I walked out and I could just it was like, Paul, it's Andy from the podcast. And you look over and trust me, there must be 1,000 of people. I can see some guy waving his hand. So I'm like, hey, how you doing? And yeah, I mean, he could have chucked me a pen. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, it was. It's actually more embarrassing for me, believe it or not, because like you're sort of thinking, oh God, like don't shout my name, because no one knows who I am. And I guess that's what makes it fun. But no, I did see him.
I really wanted him to have shouted Pitlane Paul because to give you an actual character name, that would have been even better.
It would have been funny. He might well have done. Do you know that, like, the entrance of the F1 paddock at Silverstone, there's so many people. Like, there's loads of people. I mean, a driver could start signing autographs. He could be out there for an hour and a half if he just trying to get along the line. There's so many people go. So yeah, but no, I did see him. It wasn't as bad as the snub on a grid. Look, I'm gonna be honest. As soon as we were watching the race, like one of our marketing guys, I was just like, why did she say no? And of course, they don't understand the power of Martin Brundle. They don't understand the power that gets. And he's not like, is it that big a deal? And I was just like, yeah, mate, it's going to be huge. He's like, no, it can't be that big a deal. Like, mate, goes up people all over the world. Well, if I take people on the grid and I say to them, whether it's Duff from Guns, whether it's any people I've got on the grid, I always say, if Martin comes, just say, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing how well Valtteri goes, and like, don't say no, because that's honestly, Martin Brundle's the nicest man in the world, but for some reason he's got this messiah status. So look, I agree. If a celebrity is on the grid, you are there. It's such an amazing place to be, an amazing area to be. So don't say no. You use it as a positive platform. If you go on and say no, that is going to go south, as you've seen. That's incredible.
Right.
Look,
yeah.
Look, just quickly, they don't have to speak. Everyone says like, oh, you have to speak. You have to speak. You don't have to speak. There's no rule that says when you go on the grid, you have to speak. People think there's like, oh, it's on grid passes. You've got on the grid, you've got to speak. It's absolute lies. You don't have to speak. You do what you want. But the reality is, if you don't speak, social media's going to get you.
Well, Martin, if you are listening, when me and Brian are on the grid, we'll definitely speak to you. So it's all good.
We'll be wearing our Dirty Side t-shirts like always.
Yeah, baby. Maybe we should. Well, we haven't got the Valtteri vests out yet. So maybe next time when we go somewhere that's not raining, we can rock the Valtteri vests. But anywho, it's time to open. Go on.
As Martin said, well, I'm sure it would have been really interesting.
So, time to fire up the video vault, Brian.
All right, and since you make me play these sounds, here we go. All right, the door is open. The screen door has swung open as we enjoy summer here in the Northern Hemisphere. Quick handful of videos. So, and I'm going to save the one that I want Paul's comment on for last. So first off, Alex Albon or Logan Sargent, the Williams Racing Drivers Challenge. And so this was Alex and Logan being asked questions, who's late to meetings, who does this, and they had little paddles with faces, and they had to explain. It was on and Rob, you're going to have to help me pronounce this, Watch Company, Bremont?
Yeah.
Okay, Watch Company's channel. So I found it. It was not on the Williams channel. Check it out. It was fun. We had a video entitled Blimey, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon try British food on the Alpine channel. That was pretty good. And you know what? There was a lot of foods on there I've not had. And everything I watch on television when they show some of the different foods from the UK and British food in particular, I'd love to try. So, Rob, we're going to have to set something up. Like next time we're together in person, you're going to have to find the best food in the area that you can kind of get me a Scotch egg and some of these other things that I can try. The Tomo channel, I asked 2 F1 drivers to build their dream F1 teams. 10-minute video. It was pretty good. It was Oscar and Lando, and it was before the British Grand Prix, and they kind of put together their favorite teams. I thought it sounded like a fun idea, possibly. Connor Moore had a banger. As soon as the Danny Rick news was announced, he came out as Danny Rick and had a 2-minute video where he's basically so excited to be back on the grid. And they said, "What have you been doing?" And he said, "I've been trying to kill Checo for a while now." And so it made me laugh, and it was good to see. But the last one and the first one I saw this week was George Russell and Ted Kravitz fly Eurofighter Typhoons. It was on the Sky Sports F1 channel. And we here in my household really enjoyed Top Gun Maverick. Thought it was great. My whole family liked it. I actually watched it last night again. And so having George Russell in a fighter jet giving his thoughts on the handling and, how, and again, they let him for a minute try to maneuver it, but the rest of the time he was just a passenger. He was impressed. But then they had Ted Kravitz in a flight suit, and they put him in one of these things too. Why? What was the point of that? What are we watching that for? Why do I need Ted's perspective on flying in the back seat of a fighter jet? So I enjoyed the George Russell part. I don't have a problem with Ted Kravitz. I just didn't understand the point of putting him in there. So I don't know. Paul, can I count on you to go watch this video now and send us some feedback? Because I know you'll love to see it.
I watched it. I've seen it. And amazingly, I have to completely agree with you. I don't see the reason why. Listen, I mean, for Sky, I get it because Ted Kravitz is like, one of those faces of Sky. Everyone likes his pit lane walk. What's it called? What's he do?
He does the Notebook.
That's one, yeah.
You were on it in Canada.
I was, yeah. Oh, dear. But, so I understand from that side. But, yeah, I think they think he brings a little bit of humor to proceedings, which I guess he does. Whatever. It's good for Sky.
Exactly. Whatever summed it up very well. Whatever. So with that, we will close the door. Although Rob may have one more here, but I'm gonna close this thing now.
I love the closing. You got to make the opening sound as dramatic as the closing. The opening is just.
I've looked long and hard for a sound that sounds like an opening that's that dramatic, but every one I have sounds like a closing. Anyhow,
can't we just put that sound in reverse or something? I don't know. But anyway, right. Digging into the history of Pitlane Paul. So, I took a little jaunt down the internet memory lane, and I think I've got this right. Let me count this up. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think you worked through 4 guises of the same F1 team before you ultimately left Mercedes and went on to Alpha. So I've got it as BAR, Honda F1 Racing, Brawn GP, and Mercedes.
Yeah, let's go for that. Sounds good.
Yes. Yep. Okay. So, and that's the order that it went as well, right? So you joined. I don't know if you were there right at the beginning when BAR founded, but whatever. So we want to just do a quick little jaunt down there. We won't dig into the Brawn GP because anyone listening, you can go to our website, www.dirtysideofthetrack.com, go to special episodes and listen to our amazing episode with Paul where we did the whole Brawn GP years. So if we skip over that, that's why. There's a whole episode dedicated to it. So BAR. I don't know if it's the same over here, Brian, in the US, but when you get like a first job, well, it wasn't first job, but when you're new at a role, they'll sometimes give you some real nasty jobs to do, some stupid jobs to do. Was there anything like that at BAR, Paul, where you're a new kid on the block and you got like some real stupid stuff that you ended up having to do? Or maybe what was your worst job that you had to do back at BAR days?
Well, actually, my first trackside job, I can remember it. There's stuff called we call it silver tape. It's basically like high adhesive, heat-proof silver tape, and we'd stuck it all over the diffuser of the floor. And the number one mechanic at the time, Barry Goff, who now owns a F1 memorabilia company called Memento. They're fantastic. I urge you to check them out. But he basically said, like, we need to get that tape off. Can you do it? And like, if you've ever had a sticker that's been stuck on something and cannot put, and the floor was covered in. I can remember sat there and I was so excited to be even touching an F1 card, touching this anything. I always remember doing this, taking the sticker off and think, God, this can't be it, can it? I can't have made it. So yeah, bizarrely, that's one of the ones I remember. One of the prank we used to have a lot of pranks that we always pull on new people in the paddock. And I never got caught out with this. I can't say that I ever did this to anyone. I did, but I can't say that I did because that's obviously the world of bullying nowadays. But it was the air sample. So what you'd make people do is get a trash can bag, I guess. Well, that's what they call it in America, a bin bag for us Brits. And then you get someone hold it open, then run the length of the pit lane to collect as much air in the bin bag as you possibly can, and then quickly tighten it up at the end and go and give it to the engineer upstairs. And the engineer normally is none the wiser of why you're coming to him. Obviously, everyone knows of the joke. But even like they'd run length for the pit lane, and you'll be like, no. You need to be the same height as what the air box is on the car. And they'd be like, oh, they need to empty that air out to do it again. And like every team in the pit lane would know this. So every team would be like, yeah, go faster, go faster. So if you're ever in the pit lane, especially testing, you see this kid legging it up the pit lane for bin bag, you're thinking, he's new.
That's great.
Yeah, there's loads. We used to, set of tires before qualifying. You go and call Andrew Shovling, famous Mercedes guy. Me and a guy called Paul Benstead, when we did tires at BA Honda, quite often we go to him and say there's a leak in this tire set, and he'd get in a panic and run downstairs and go through the tires, and we would have actually gone to the kitchen and actually got a leak, as in the vegetable leak, and put it in. So yeah, there's a lot of tricks and a lot of games that get played. But as for bad jobs, the silver tape would be the one. Luckily, I don't think I ever got caught out with any of the jokes. I'm quite switched on. I'm not, but I'm quite switched on. But yeah, that's the silver tape. I'll never forget.
By the way, just quickly on the tires thing, something that I didn't even know until you gave us our amazing little paddock tour was that the tires aren't fitted by you guys to the wheels. You've got the Pirelli tent or whatever it is that fit it all for you and then give them to you. But then, like you said to us, you end up going and refitting them yourselves anyway. But for some reason, I imagine they got delivered to you with tires already attached to the wheel rims. So I didn't realize they were actively on site fitting them all for you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So again, just cost wise, logistic wise. The tires are always selected in advance, so the tires will go out in sea freight containers. So you think Singapore later? I'm assuming I'm right here. I could be completely wrong, but as far as I'm aware, tires more often than not will go sea freight. So the tires for Singapore will already be bounding the way across the ocean somewhere on the way to Singapore, on the way to Japan. I'm quite sure some get air freighted, but you imagine the cost of air freight and the cost of, numbers. Let's think. I think each team has 40 or says 400 tires that you got to air freight across the world. That makes no financial sense. It makes no sense for the magic Formula One carbon offset, which they're magically trying to achieve. So tires are obviously set well in advance. You have to take the wheel rims as a team. And obviously the wheel rims are heavier, so I think you're talking probably over a ton in weight of wheel rims. I'm pretty sure it was something like $290 a kilo of air freight for the year. So if you do the sums on what it costs for you just to fly your wheel rims around the world, imagine you flying your tires as well. It would never work. It would never be a thing. So yeah, tires get used, they get taken back by Pirelli afterwards, and they get recycled and turned into something. I've no idea what, but they get turned into something. But
I tell you might end up. They get shredded and put on AstroTurf, and then they end up in my socks. That's where they go.
That does happen. But it is quite sad when you go to a race that's either fully wet or fully dry, because there's a load of tires then that get stripped off the cars, and those tires are scrapped regardless if they're brand new or not brand new.
Really?
Yeah. They don't get used again. In Europe, the wet tires would tend to get mounted. I think they still do this. They'll get mounted, and then Pirelli will carry them race to race. If they got space on the truck to save them stripping and fitting them. But yeah, on flyaways, yeah, stuff gets taken off, and that's it. The tires are dead.
There we are. Things you didn't know about tires. Brian is dumbfounded. He's like, this is tire overload for him. He's like,
I wish I were at my normal desk recording this because I just got my tire keychain that I ordered from the F1 store that we were talking about. I did it. I pulled the trigger. It's a little Pirelli. It's a medium tire. And it is obviously, the outside's rubber. It's got a little wheel. It's a keychain. It's fantastic, but it's upstairs where it is. So I can't show it to the video. But yeah, I'd buy one of those tires before they scrapped it. I'd pay for it and then put some people in it and roll it down a hill.
Anyway, before we move on to Honda, BAR favorite memory. If you have to think back at your time at BAR, what's the favorite memory of BAR? Go.
Do you know what? A real bad one. It was Belgium '99 when both cars crashed in qualifying, and they got totally destroyed. I mean, Jack crashed in qualifying at Eau Rouge. Red flag because the car, there's nothing left of the car. He was very lucky to walk away from it. And then they red flag qualifying while they swept the car into a van and sort of brought it back to us. And then Ricardo Zonta, our other driver, went out on the very next lap, so some 15 minutes later, and literally did exactly the same thing. If you look on YouTube at BAR Spa 99, you'll see that was actually my first ever race.
Oh, wow.
So my first ever trackside testing thing was scraping the silver off the floor. My first ever race was like scraping bits of car into the back of a transit van to send home. So, and you know what? Both things they're real. That's that's motor racing is real. That's real life of what you go through in this sport. And Eau Rouge, we don't need to speak too much about that corner. We know the tragedies that happened up there. Even last week or 2 weeks ago, the young kid who was killed up there. It's a dangerous corner. And if you get that corner wrong, there ain't a lot left of anything when you go off there. So yeah, that was my first actual F1 race, and I woke up on Saturday morning and went to sleep on Monday night. It was brutal. But if anything's going to set you up for this career, it's that, because it can only get better. Trust me.
Well, come on, you've hit me with the worst. Is there a highlight from the BAR years that you look back on with fondness?
Yeah, that one.
That one as well. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Bittersweet.
Yeah, genuinely that one, because I think it's like it doesn't get a lot worse than that. So anything that happens in this job after that is just going to be rosy and brilliant. And I know it's like a negative positive, but it was such a. And actually, I think I'm pretty sure that was Jack Villeneuve's first ever finish in Formula One. Not in with BAR, not obviously his first ever finish. He was world champion, but his first finish for BAR was the Belgian race. It's the first time we finished a race with him, and I'm pretty sure I might actually be wrong. I'm not 100% on that, but yeah, I can always remember the sense of relief at him finishing the race, because it was like. Hey, back then, by the way, we had 3 cars. We had the 2 race cars, what's called a T car, test car. So the T car, which was the third car, became Jack's race car, and then 2 cars that were going to Monza testing turned around, drove to Belgium, unloaded the test cars. We had to strip every nut and bolt off of those cars, and then refit them with race spec kit, because everything on an F1 car is lifed to something like 500 kilometers. So if you're going to exceed 500 kilometers in a race, if you're going to exceed the mileage in a race over 500 kilometers, for instance, if I pass to 300k, you're going to go over it during the race. You have to take that bolt off. You can't race it. So yeah, everything had to come off these test cars. So yeah, actually, genuinely a magical experience. It was one of the best things that I ever did in the sport. I know it sounds really weird. I know it sounds really weird, but in my head, it was such a brilliant thing to go through.
That sounds pretty neat. So I guess as you look at Honda, any things that jump out kind of to Rob's questions, right? Anything that jumps out that says, your favorite or your lowest point? Did you have any experiences when you look back and you just, it sticks in your memory?
I would say, I mean, Honda is sort of a little bit of a cheat. It's more BAR Honda, even though we just sort of covered that a little bit. I'd say our first race win in Budapest. But if we're going to go Honda clean out, I will. There's not a lot to celebrate with those days at Honda. The trouble is, no. The reason being is BAR Honda won Budapest 2005. 2006. Then we had this Earth Dreams car, where it was this black car with this globe on the side, and we didn't have any sponsors. We decided we were going to save the world. Then Ross Brawn came in, and then I can't think of real any highlights from Honda.
What's it like? So with the, I guess this wasn't really a full changeover. The BAR to Honda wasn't really like a. Was it more different when Ross formed Brawn GP in the 2009? I mean, because you've stayed in place, yeah, but you've carried different badges for your career, right? Until you finally left Mercedes. And I always kind of wonder, like, is there a nervous moment around the whole team? Was there like going to be people let go, new faces coming in? Because I guess every time it goes through new ownership, there's the opportunity. There is in our world, in kind of like the financial sector. If you acquire another company, for example, then everyone's kind of like crapping it, going, "Oh my god, have I still got a role here?" But I don't know him F1. Are you just putting a new badge on the team and no one's got any worries? How does that all kind of fly?
the short answer is yes. That is exactly how it works. So, if you look at what is now Aston Martin, they're the same Jordan team that they were based at Silverstone in the same factory, even though they got a new one now, it's on the same site. With us, BAR, yeah, we're the same. If you know, I don't, this isn't confidential, so I'm quite sure I can get away with saying this, but if you,
Incoming scoop.
but if you obviously doing the computer and some of the IT stuff with Mercedes, when um, a lot of the I don't know the exact computer geeky terms for it, but a lot of the background stuff that runs Mercedes still has BARF1 as a on a lot like the internety type stuff. A lot of like I guess the domain structure. I don't know enough about computers to know, but you will still find a lot of BAR still existing in the Mercedes team, and that's solely because it is the same. It is the same team, and if if Mercedes pull out next week, and they're not, providing we get a panic on, if Mercedes pull out next week and someone else comes in to take on that team, you just peel a sticker off and put a new sticker on, and you. So the Mercedes one's quite a good one because we have a heritage department now with that team, whereas they rebuild every car that they have left from each season Mercedes have run. But they haven't done that with the BARs, which is really sad, I think, because the team still deserves that recognition of where they come from. But then even with BAR, we were Tyrrell before
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
Tyrrell, so again, it's okay, it's a complete team change. And I think you're going to see the same with Alfa Romeo or Sauber, as they're called, now going to Audi. Everyone in Audi is sort of like, it's Sauber, like, oh, are we going to move to Germany? Well, probably not, no, because that's not what they're buying the team for.
Right.
And if you buy Aston Martin or you buy Mercedes, you're laughing. You got a whole team set up for you. You don't need to relocate anything. You just I would say that personally. That's my honest feedback.
Well, I appreciate that on the season and then some memories. And you kind of led us into the Mercedes. And we talked about Brawn GP earlier, as Rob said. Have a great episode on that. And he gave you the link, dirtysideofthetrack.com, special episodes. And so, Paul, then in the Mercedes years, like, you were there for a while. And when did it first kind of become clear that you were becoming the team to beat? I guess becoming the team to beat, because you weren't right away with Red Bull's domination with Seb.
Oh, that's a great question, actually. Well, it started pretty. Obviously, we had Braun, and then we had the Mercedes takeover straight away. But Mercedes only really came in at a real low level. We wanted to be branded at Mercedes, but we didn't want to have the budget of Mercedes. So it's quite a weird um, type. How can I word it? Yeah, we were like a budget Mercedes, if that makes any sort of logic in sense. So we were a very budget team. Norbert Haag was in, but then we had Michael Schumacher driving for us. It was like, oh my God, we've got Shui in. And it was like really exciting from that point. And then out of the blue, we we didn't know we didn't know about Lewis Hamilton. Like that
Okay.
just happened. It just sort of like we signed Lewis Hamilton, like, and like everyone, even us, like why is he coming here? Because we were doing nothing at that time with Mercedes. Like you said, Red Bull were all over. They were winning. We picked up a podium here and there. We weren't a competitive team. We weren't a team who was anywhere, in my opinion, near winning. We knew that there was the engine change in 2014, the engine regulation change. So we knew that there were Mercedes were gearing up towards that change. So we were sort of optimistic that it might be good, but I don't think anyone expected in their heart of hearts for us to dominate as much as we did then for the next 8 years. Is it
Yeah.
8 years?
Yeah. I think
7 years.
did you win 8 on the bounce? You got the 8th one at the end when Lewis didn't win it, right? But that was 8
Yes,
for
eight.
you guys, I think.
Yeah,
So,
it's like yeah. Well, do you know?
so
Here's the funny thing. It's really hard for me to come back because there's a lot of people at the team, and this sort of goes back to I guess this topic quite a lot. There's a lot of people at the team at Mercedes who would be like, we're 7-time world champions in this team, and I'd be like, well, no, 8. And they'd be like, well, what do you mean 8? Well, Brawn GP. Oh, that don't count. Like, well, if it wasn't for Brawn GP, you wouldn't be here. So
yeah.
to discredit that, you can't do that. So I that's why I always get confused when I'm like 7-8, 7-8. What do we actually win? I always say we operate as a team. We won 8 world championships because you have to include Brawn, and it is right because Lewis won 8. No, Lewis won
7.
6 with us, 1 with McLaren.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
correct.
You got it. I got it. So on that note, because I think we might have touched upon this with one of the other episodes you came on where we talked about like the moment that no, or was it the Brawn GP where you don't remember anything about celebrating that night? It was kind of like a blur that like the whole championship kind of was decided. But when you're in that Mercedes period, it's not that you're going to get complacent that it's expected each time, but as it's becoming and it's building and Lewis is starting to win more and more, and do you get to enjoy celebrating it more each year because it's less unknown and it's not as kind of like, oh my God, we won. And then to build on to that, by the end, does it start to get a little bit, oh well, we won again? Or do you keep that excitement level all the way through?
Hmm. Look, every win is brilliant. The reason I've got a bit of a thing with this is actually to get anywhere near a point with Alfa Romeo, and you see how much that team celebrates getting a point or getting 2 points. Same with you saw the reaction of McLaren at just getting a podium.
Yeah.
That's always to be celebrated. And I think we're all guilty of when you're winning all the time. I've known people who have finished. We finished second and third in a race, and they don't bother going to the podium because they're like, "Oh well, we didn't win, so what's the point?" And so yeah, I think you become a little bit. You enjoy the victories, but I guess what I'm trying to say is some people it becomes so expected. And I always said that Mercedes, the best thing that could happen with Mercedes as a team would be to not win the championship for a couple of years. I would be like, I don't. Why would you say that? Because a lot of people at the team are only there because we're winning. When you're not winning, they're like rats off a sinking ship. Whereas, and I know for a fact that a lot of people have left Mercedes and gone to Red Bull for different reasons, not all for this reason, but I know people have done it. And I know if Ferrari started winning, you'd probably find Ferrari start taking a lot of people because everyone wants to be with a winning team. And I always say, if you have a season not winning, then you know who's there for the fight and who's there not for the fight. But yeah, I think in answer to your question, winning a championship is fantastic. Winning races has become normal, and that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing to say because it's quite arrogant, but not for the arrogant reasons. If that makes sense, it just you're winning. You're like, yay, you go to the podium, but all you wanted to do is pack up and go home. Back when we were winning with Brawn GP, you won a race. You didn't care about packing up. You wanted a party. McLaren, it was right there. The McLaren guys, when they got the podium, the smile on the faces, reaction of the team. I don't know if you can remember when Vettel won with, I say Toro Rosso, which is AlphaTauri now. They won in Monza. And they didn't start packing up for about 5 hours. They were just partying because they'd never won a race. All of a sudden, they've won their home Grand Prix. And I think, and I think the same with Red Bull. And I think the Red Bull guys would probably say the same. It's great winning. You want to win races, but it does get boring. You celebrate the championships, I think, a lot more than you celebrate the race wins. They just become normal.
I don't know which one of Lewis's championships it was, but there's always that picture that I like the most of you. I think you're spraying him with a bottle of champagne, where the whole team is celebrating. I think that's the driver's title. It might have been constructors, it might have been both. I'm not sure, but that looked like to me a guy that was really enjoying the moment. You mentioned earlier championships had kind of like you can't even remember them, but that one looked like you were in the moment anyway.
Do you know I've done it twice, and I literally about a meter behind me in one of the cupboards. I've got two, they're bigger than A3 pictures, full gloss pictures that are signed by Lewis. Like, Harris, thanks. Of me literally blasting me in the face with champagne twice, and it's both times when he's won the drivers' championship. Funny enough, I actually had these pictures out the other day because I was showing us some people around. I was showing them, and I was just saying, like, why have I not got these framed and on the wall? Because they're so iconic. We have a thing in the UK, Brian, which you won't know, called BBC Sports Personality of the Year.
I've heard
which
of it.
is, okay, so it's basically. I mean, people in this country get very confused by it because it's basically who's the biggest achievement of the year. People in this country can't differ between what is the greatest achievement or who's got the best personality. So it's named incorrectly. So we tennis player got Andy Murray, who's the funniest guy in the world. He won it a couple of times, but he always comes across as really drab, and everyone's sort of like, he shouldn't win it. He's got no personality, and you're like, no. Anyway, I digress. When Lewis won this the last time, as they presented him with a trophy, the picture behind the stage, in the full width of the stage, was me tipping a bottle of champagne on his head. And it's one of those I've got signed. So yeah, they are magical. Those things are magical. They're where the memories made. When Nico won in Abu Dhabi, I can remember him winning that championship, and the whole team was pumped at that. Lewis less so, but the whole team was pumped on that because it was the guy who he was always the underdog, and it was great to see him win it. But no, we celebrate. That's what I mean. You celebrate the championships a lot harder than individual race wins. I don't think that's unfair.
So is there I guess, is there a single memory you always hold above all others? Single one.
If this was the and then Brian probably won't know this. Do they have "This Is Your Life" in the US where they come out with a little book and look back over someone's life? I think we did. I can't remember the name of the guy that hosted it in the UK. Paul Michael someone maybe.
I keep thinking Michael Aspel, but I'm not sure.
Oh yes, I think you're right. Anyway, if we were doing the big red book and like "This Is Your Life, Paul," your life in F1, and we asked you what's the one thing that sticks out above all others, Paul Harris says,
I have to go with Brawn GP. I have to because it were because of the story which I said. I'm not going to go through again because we have the other podcast, which please listen to it. Actually quite proud of it because it's quite an emotional story. But I have to say Brawn because it was so. Brad Pitt's doing this new film, and I don't think if Brad Pitt did the film of that year, you'd just be like, "Oh, that ain't never gonna happen."
This is too outlandish to happen.
Yeah, it is. I think the fact that we did do it and it did happen, and it was go. If you haven't listened, please listen to that podcast. It is and even listen to the podcast, you'll probably think, this guy's full of it. But honestly, Brawn GP, you're not gonna beat that.
Well, I mean, those are all everything we talked about in your career, amazing memories, and I totally get it. I love the fact that you have like those pictures, or you talk about the fact when Lewis won the sports personality and the picture of you spraying him was on in the background. I mean, it does remind me of when Rob and I were in the background of the Sky Sports interview of George Russell, and we were able to see ourselves in the background. Now, granted, smaller stage, But for us, it means just as much. So to hear your version of it, a little different than ours, is pretty cool.
I've only got one small little exception with that, which is that when it clocks, no one else will know this, and it's only really between us three and anybody who's listening to this episode, but as that camera pans out as she's talking to George, and you look round, and Paul looks round, then Paul like nudges me and we all start laughing. That's because he's taking the mick out of me for my high-pitched George. That's exactly what's happening at that moment on that thing.
But he nailed it. Like, the best jokes are based in some kind of reality. And just for everyone's benefit, as George starts walking towards us with the camera in his face and he's being interviewed, Rob looks at both of us. He goes, "It's George, it's George, it's George."
Let's
and
move
then
on.
it's totally true. And then as soon as he went by, Paul couldn't stop making fun of him for that. So Paul nailed it. It was based in
George,
truth.
look, George, look, George.
Right, shut up. I shouldn't have brought it up.
Why did you say that? Anyhow, so let's shift to a little bit of today, to a little bit of where we are in the season 2023 so far. We had an early entrance into silly season that kind of, made some big waves. Paul, as you look up and down the grid and at the teams and at what they're trying to achieve and who, test and reserve pen and who may be up coming from F2, do you think we're going to have a busy remaining silly season? Do you think we're going to see a lot of shifting amongst the current drivers or people coming in? We'd love your thoughts. We've been debating it, and I sort of thought Nick's seat was obviously going to happen. I didn't think it'd happen this early. And then I'm not sure I see a ton. I mean, I think there'll be some, but I don't think it'll be like ground swells of craziness. Like everyone was all excited about Charles or Lewis or this or that. So I'm curious your thoughts as you look. Big season, little silly season, no silly season. Rob, maybe you go first.
I hate to agree with you, so maybe I really shouldn't. I should let Paul go, because otherwise I'm going to have to agree with you that maybe the Danny Rick was the big thing, and then there's not a lot coming afterwards. But I don't know.
I'm going to go for an alternative world here, where Lewis Hamilton is going to sign for Ferrari to replace Carlos Sainz. Mercedes is going to get Vestian from F2 to partner George Russell. Red Bull are going to get rid of Perez. He's going to retire, and Alex Albon is going to move into Red Bull. And then we have, where are we then? Aston Martin. Aston Martin are going to stay probably as they are. Oh, help me out. McLaren.
Who gets Albon's seat
at Williams?
Because now they've just got rookie Logan in your world at the moment.
No, it's true.
I mean, they could sign me and make it a double American situation.
They could sign you, yeah.
I did just finish watching the latest Grand Tour episode, and the fact that Clarkson can't fit into that car. I'm just looking at you, Brian, and thinking,
You always say it like I'm super fat.
Broad and tall.
Yeah.
Where are we now? So let's keep working down. Alpine. Who are their drivers?
Gasly and
Ocon. That's state. Alpha Tauri, that probably stay. Alfa Romeo, I can't see no reason for us to change. I'm struggling now, aren't I? Haas and Williams. So Magnussen's gone. Hulkenberg stays. I'm going to put, let's go, a tentative. Perez is going to go to Haas last season. And then Theo Pourchaire from F2 is going to go to Williams.
All right. Okay, very green racing team at Williams then.
Yeah, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be realistic.
I like that version.
Mercedes, I can't see Lewis leaving, to be honest with you. So, I mean, he's probably going to sign. Him and George are set. There's a few rumours circling that Carlos Sainz could be Audi bound. That's not till 25, so he's probably going to be there next year. So I can't see them changing. The only way I see Aston changing is if Alonso retires. And I think I'm going where you are here. I don't really see many gaps. McLaren are not going to change. Why would they change? AlphaTauri, again, the only one who's vulnerable is Yuki, but I can't see that happening.
Haas.
I don't know, who's getting Honda engines? Who's getting Honda? Someone signed Honda engines.
Aston.
God, why can't
is it?
I think Aston Martin have gone to Honda.
I think it was. It wasn't McLaren. I think it was Aston.
Yeah, so I mean, Yuki is obviously prize target for those guys because they'll always want a Japanese influence. So I think he's got to hang around. Again, us guys sober, no reason to change. I sort of agree with you, really. I mean, there's drivers I think are really going to luck out, and I think Alex Albon, who was having the most amazing season, and I think you have to remember the way that guy was treated down at Red
Right.
Bull. I think for his, he was ridiculed, I think, by that team, and the bounce back he's had in the performance he's putting in at Williams and a car, which I've got to be honest with you, isn't good. He is literally getting everything he can out of it. And if you're not impressed, if you're not an Alex Albon fan, then you don't deserve to be watching racing.
That's what I've said. I could see. I agree. It makes he. I don't understand how you could dislike Alex. Like that bothers me. If someone would say I don't like Alex Albon, if you're neutral because you don't know, then learn. But other than that, I don't understand. He seems like a great guy too. I mean, have you ever interacted with him? Is that any of that accurate? His personality as it shows in the media?
Yeah.
Seems like a humble, good dude.
Yep, exactly. And what you see is what you get with Alex, and what you see in the media is what the guy is. He's a nice guy. He's genuine. He's just normal. He's not a superstar. But I think where I'm going with this is, even with that guy having the season he is, unless Williams produce a car that's really rocket fuel, I can't see him moving too far forward in terms of teams, which is upsetting, really, a little bit, because I think he deserves a chance. Then, if you look at the rookies, you mentioned the rookies. I think Nick De Vries, I really feel sorry for him. I just think it's hard. Oscar's had a good season. He's had a pretty poor car. Lando's done a lot better than him, and Silverstone, I hope, isn't a one-off. I think you said in the last pod, I hope it isn't a one-off for that team, because I think they do deserve something. But I think Logan Sargent is. You said that the gap between those guys is huge. I actually think the gap between those guys is huge because Albon is doing such a ridiculous job.
Maybe, yeah.
And it's making. I don't think, when George Russell was destroying Lewis last year, it isn't because George is a better driver. It's simply the reason is some drivers will get a car that is really poor and rag it to pieces and be able to drive a really bad car. Whereas a driver who's been used to driving a Rolls Royce all his life can't just get into a Skoda and rock around in that, Well, I like Skoda.
Yeah.
I could instantly think of another car then, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those things, and maybe Logan just. I think if you put anyone in that Williams, would they do better than Logan Sargent? I think it's a little bit of the Nick De Vries scenario. Would they do better? I'm not sure.
And he has actually, that we commented on this, the last 2, maybe 3 races, he's been actually starting to knock on the door of a points finish as opposed to trundling around at the back. So I think he's been 11th and 12th recently, or the other way around.
12th and 13th, maybe.
And it's not because that's not because he's got like a million DNFs that are pushing him up the finishing order either. He's there on merit. So yeah, I don't want them to pull the trigger on him, but F1 doesn't have a lot of patience, so I don't see Williams swapping him in the mid-season. But like we all know, silly season it often makes deals for the following season. So I'm not 100% sure he's safe for next year. But
so Paul, I got to go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you look at the guys who are knocking on the door, do you watch F2?
Not a lot.
Yeah,
I know of it, and I keep an eye on some of the bigger names that people go off on. If there's a big thread on Twitter about a certain driver, I'll go and keep an eye on them. But no, I wouldn't say I religiously watch it. I'd be lying.
No, that's absolutely fine. But that's obviously the stepping ground for F1. All of those guys that in F2, most of them are part of an F1 team. So Theo Pichère is part of Sauber. Vesti is part of Mercedes. You've got Red Bull young drivers. You've got Williams young drivers. So if you watch F2, you'll actually see cars in F2 that's sort of looking the same as their F1 rivals. So if let's just purely look at F2, there are probably 4 or 5 drivers in F2 currently who deserve an F1 seat, in my opinion. They're that fast. You've also got the likes of Mick Schumacher. You can't discount Nick De Vries. He isn't a bad driver. But if you look, I can name you easily here and now 7, 8 drivers who should be driving in F1. And there are talk of more teams coming into F1, and I think it's good. But it's it's a hard market. That sport is a hard market, and as you've seen this week, it's cruel and it's breakneck. And if you're not performing, you you know the clouds are going to come over you very quickly. And I think Logan Sargent, he is under a little bit of bump about it, if I'm being honest with you. And but the trouble is who do you replace him with? You're just going to replace him with another rookie or Mick Schumacher at the moment. So it's hard. It's really hard. F1 needs more teams, is what I'm going to say, so we can make this silly season a lot easier for us.
So as it's an amazing segue maybe into Brian's fantastic game that he came up with is
4 minutes before we started recording.
If F1 needs more teams and we here were to create our own dirty side F1 team, let's have a bit of fun with debating who we would have. Now, this is over to you, Brian, because you came up with this idea. Was it drivers?
Well, I stole it. I stole it from the video I'd mentioned from Tomo's interview with Oscar
So go on, take us through what we got to do then.
Well, we need to come up with the key parts of our livery. So obviously, for those on YouTube, right behind Rob, it's the dirty side flag. We'll talk more about it because I want to tweak the livery. But if we have the livery, 2, team principal. Who do we want running the team? And then 3, what's our driver lineup? And 2 drivers, and put them in the car, and what's the chemistry? So it was interesting on the video because they were drafting against each other. We have the luxury of choosing whomever we like, so that'll be good. But we have to debate and kind of come up with
from current crop, right? We're not going to go past and present, right? So this isn't going to be like we're going to draft Fangio into the okay. So current crop for that, okay, and then same for team principals, right? Whoever's in the current crop at the moment.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, we can go for that. We can debate what we want. So
let's talk livery because I think that's a good place to start.
It's the most important thing.
Ease us in, right? Let's take it easy as into the hard stuff. I mean, we obviously have what I think is a fantastic logo made by Robert J. Vale Incorporated, and so I like the black and white aspect to the way we often use it. I know it can be on colored backgrounds and it can be different things, and we've used a different things inserted behind the logo. But to me, there's something about the exposed carbon fiber, the black aspect like you see on the Mercedes, that is just so cool. So for me, if we could do a livery, I would save weight. I wouldn't use a ton of paint. I'd use sort of the black exposed carbon fiber with the dirty side logo on both side pod. And then I would get sponsors for the rest, but that's where I would start.
I'm not sure. Yeah, dirty side logo on both sides, but I'm thinking, you know how Ferrari has got Ferrari written over the top of the rear wing?
Yes.
Just dirty side written across the top of the rear wing. That's where I'd be putting our brand in.
I mean, I guess I would go with a black car with
black car, full black car, white font for dirty side on the rear wing,
and then colors for any sponsors, reds and things like that.
Maybe they can only have white writing for the sponsors. We'll be a complete black and white car. We'll be kind of be like the John Player special, but instead of black and gold, it'll be black and white.
We finish at the back of the grid, and they'll say it's like they think they're still in the 70s.
So, Paul, you're our head of marketing. What sponsors are the dirty side getting to go all over our cars? What really sums up the dirty side?
Well, I mean, are you running what black are you running? Are you running painted black or carbon black?
Carbon fiber, fully exposed carbon fiber. Okay. We think because you've got to keep weight down. So we
can't get alcohol sponsors anymore, can we?
Yeah, you could be really clever with alcohol sponsors. So dirty side, I'm just thinking there's an Irish stout company quite famous globally that would look really good with the black carbon. Obviously you can't name names for other stouts are available, but because
you'd have to do something with beer the same way that in the world of tobacco, we mentioned it a few episodes ago. I think it was Jordan ran the Bitten and Hisses livery,
exactly.
Which was it was very, very clever. It's still one of my favorite liveries with a snake on the nose. But maybe we'd have to get. I think we just need to be sponsored by beer companies only, and they have to set the challenge to their marketing departments to come up with something that is obviously their beer brand, but without naming them.
Or the 0.0 version, which I think is allowed. Yeah. Anyway, team principal. Now we're getting into the juicy stuff. Yeah. The juicy, hard parts. We're getting there. Not to drivers yet. But so, we'll start with you, Rob. Who would you nominate of current team principals to run the dirty side team? Who are we going to poach with our big bag of money?
the one and only for me, we get Gunther in because I just think I want a boat, I want swearing, I want door slamming,
You want
and
the
I want
Steiner
to
ship?
get an absolute nailed on certainty that Drive to Survive want to follow us around for a year because he's TV gold.
Interesting. I would have preferred.
No idea if he's a good team
Yeah, I was going to
principal.
prefer
I'm
you
so
focus on the
shallow.
results, but all right, you're just going for comedy. Man, that's a tough one. So, like, I just me personally, I apologize to Red Bull fans in advance. There's not a chance in hell I'd want Christian Horner behind my microphone set. I just no, thank you. Yeah, as I look up and down the team principals today, there are two that, and again, apologies to the ones I don't really know enough about, the Mike Cracks of the world. But there are two that I would really like to consider and go after. One would be Otmar, and one would be Toto. And again, if it's fantasy world and we got all the money, those would be the two that I'd probably
Come
pursue
on,
the hardest.
nail your colours to the mast. Which one you picking? Dance around it and
I think I'm going
apologise
with
to all the people you haven't named.
I think I'm going with Toto.
Toto.
Yeah.
Pitlane Paul. Who's getting your vote?
Mine's really easy, but mine's really boring. It's going to be Toto, and I'll explain very quickly why Toto. And that was just I mean, I was firsthand part of the change that he brought into that team when he took it over, and the level that he took what was an okay team and raised it into what it was, and everything, whether it's commercially, technically. I have to say Toto because I think and I know I'm going to be biased, but he's the best guy out there I know, and he's a very, very, very good laugh as well. He's absolutely
Well,
great on a night out.
On that front, then it's a vote there of 2-1 for Toto. But as long as Toto can bring the comedy value for our Drive to Survive episodes when we're on, I'm all for that. Then okay, I'll cede to Toto.
So Rob,
Yeah,
I also I just thought of this. I'm pretty slow on the uptake. What we're basically doing is just creating a boatload of Photoshop content for you for next week, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
That livery is on its way already, I'm telling you.
No doubt. No doubt.
I was going to say, Toto's a very funny guy. Like, it doesn't come across that much with him, but trust me, Toto is, I mean, some of the stuff which I'm never going to tell because, like the one thing with the sport, you never tell a lot of stuff, but trust me, Toto is, my God, some of the things.
First rule of F1 club.
Yeah, he's a proper funny guy, but that doesn't always come across in a lot of the media stuff, especially not Abu Dhabi. What was it? 2020, whatever it was.
Yeah, totally host.
Didn't come across quite funny in that one, but nah, trust me, he's a great guy. I agree with you, Toto. Gunter would be really funny, but we want to win races, and Toto.
Can we have him as assistant then? Can he carry Toto's bags or something?
And in American high schools, we have in schools we have the principal, but then we have the assistant principal. So can we have the team assistant principal as Gunther?
Yeah, let's get Gunther on board for.
We can agree with that. We'll go there.
All right.
Right. So, reverse order then, being as Paul went last on the principals. Who's taking your? Well, let's build up to who's taking your number 2 driver spot. Who's our wingman for our main man?
Oh wow.
Oh God, I should have given this more thought because I knew this was coming.
And you can't name Valtteri twice.
I'm not going to name Valtteri at all. I'm not. That sounds awful. The reason I say that is I want to be a little bit left field. I'm going to go with Piastri.
Ooh.
What? I didn't see that one coming at all. I just crossed the road and got hit by a bus coming, and I didn't even know it was there.
Well, then, who's your number 2 driver then, Ryan?
Oh man, I just came up with my number 1.
Well, you know how he had to name 2, then pick the other one.
Working on it over here. Working on it. So I can't believe I'm doing this, but I am. So my number 2 driver is none other than Charles Chuck Leclerc.
Charles Chuck Leclerc.
Rob,
Where's
how
that
about
clip
you?
from?
It was when Willie T. Ribbs interviewed him in Miami, or was it Austin, a year ago. And he gets him up, I think it was on Quali, and he gets up there and he's about to interview him, and he goes, Charles Chuck Leclerc. And I'm thinking, ain't no one in the world ever called him Chuck before.
That's so good. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
My number 2 driver is Albono.
Really?
Yeah, Alex Albon, taking him in there.
I mean, these are
In he
great
comes.
choices. Here's the best part of this. These are all good choices. Like, I mean, mine's obviously best, but all of these I thought, yeah, that's all right. That's pretty good. So who goes first for first? You, Rob? We'll go backwards, snake draft style.
Okay, but are we gonna? Okay, so
We'll
we'll
debate
work
at
out
the
team.
end. Yeah.
We'll debate at the end. Okay, so we'll go backwards. So my number one driver to complement Alex, and it is in no way shaped by my bias for the team that I follow. Um, I'm going to take Carlos Sainz in there. I think he gets downplayed as the lead driver at Ferrari. I think Charles takes all the headlines, but I like Carlo. There's something about him. I think him and Alex are going to rule the world in the dirty side team.
So you're taking the smooth operator as your number one driver of anybody on the grid.
Stop inventing. It's fact.
Okay.
Copy. We'll check that.
I'm going to look forward to debating this one at the end. All right, next.
I guess Brian. It was me going backwards. So my number one driver, and now I'm switching it up in my mind.
And I didn't pick Max for obvious reasons, just to not take the obvious ones.
I mean, I'm trying to win, man. With a runway in front of us, build a team for years. I'm taking Max as my number one driver. Max and Charles, that's my combo.
Go on, Paul. Who you got?
I'm torn between two, and those two are quite obvious, aren't they?
I mean, the two you're thinking of, is it Max and Lewis, or is it not that obvious?
Yeah, it is obvious.
That's where I was. I had the same. I was exactly the same.
While you're thinking, I'll give you some thinking time, Paul. My reason behind not Max is that I was trying to make a unified dirty side team, which can have two drivers that can be up there together, and I just don't see anybody playing nicely with Max, and therefore you're going to build a team around one driver, and the other driver doesn't really matter. We might as well put Brian in the car.
So wait, thank you. So I was going to say Max and Lando because they seem like buddies. They're both young, and I thought we'd get something out of it. And then I really wanted to have Lewis as my number one driver for a long time. But how many years, honestly, do you think he has left and that he wants to be there? 3? I don't know. And so I'm building for...
This is where I am.
So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly the same. How long has Lewis got left? But I am going to go with Lewis. And can I explain why I'm going to go with Lewis?
Go for it.
Of course.
I think if we're setting up a team tomorrow, we're committing Lewis to a 3-year contract. He's got no choice. But
he can still retire. I mean, he doesn't have to show up.
No. He's not. No. It's written in the thing. He can't retire. He's done. But I just think, as a team thing, the name associated with the Dirty Side racing team is huge. The technical, I mean, like Max is incredible. We know Max is incredible, but I think the technical feedback and the assistance Lewis would give you from his experience. I mean, like, you think Max is young. This is a silly thing. Max has been in F1 for what, 7-8 years now?
Yeah.
But he's only like 25 or 26 or something like that.
It's crazy. So I think Max won his first race before he was legally able to drive a car.
Right.
Which, again, is scary. So for me to say Lewis got a ton of experience is a little bit unfair, but I think it's all... I just think, yeah. And I'm going to go with Lewis just because I think, yeah... And because you've gone with Max, and we'll have nothing to debate at the end if we don't.
So are we? So So the teams are, just to recap where we're standing at this point. Toto's our team principal. Yep. We have the team vice principal or assistant principal in Gunter. Rob has made a decision to make Carlos Sainz, or as we called him in Canada, Sainz, the number one driver, with Albon, a great choice, as your second driver. Paul has put Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest of all time, as his number one driver. And his number two driver is the young Aussie, Piastri. And I have made the wise choice of putting the best driver on the grid today, the reigning champion, the soon-to-be 30-time champion, Max Verstappen, followed by Charles Leclerc, who has incredible talent, just needs a car like the Dirty Side car, which will be tremendous.
They're gonna fight. You're gonna get so much in. They both want to be top dog alpha there. You're gonna get that team's tearing itself apart. Like Gunther's gonna be slamming the door on the way out of his boat. It's all going down the drain. That one, Brian.
I didn't think of that part.
I think that's a little bit where I went with Piastri.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Is you've got a guy. He's a nice kid. Oh God. By the way, we have a sport in the UK. It's the third biggest sport in the world. It's way bigger than any of your American sports, called cricket. And at the moment, it's England versus Australia and a thing called the Ashes. I'm not going to bore you too much with this thing, but between England and Australia, it's quite a big tournament. Uh, Me and Oscar are really into each other about the Ashes at the moment. It's currently Australia 2, England 1. But yeah, we're as you. I don't know if you saw him in Canada. There was quite a bit of a thing between us. He's a nice kid. He's a genuine kid who is unbelievably fast. I think he's. I don't believe he's going to have a negative bone in his body as regards a teammate. I think he's going to push them, but he isn't going to be. He isn't going to be a Nico Rosberg on Lewis. He's going to be a Lewis on Nico Rosberg. He isn't going to be a Ricciardo with Max or a Max with Sergio where they're falling out all the time. I just think you can have a nice balanced team. Whereas what you've gone for, Brian, is an absolute disaster.
Well, so here's my opening salvo to solving this, and I'm going to completely ignore Rob as most smart people do. So what I would say is we should blend the teams. My point would be you were debating Lewis and Max. You agree with me that the length of Lewis's future, it was part of it. He's obviously one of the greatest of all times. We all know. But what if I said we had a Max Oscar garage? What are you thinking about that option? Rob, I'm going to mute you, and you can just wait till Paul and I
because
figure
hang on
out
a
the
minute.
team.
You, if we rewind about 30 minutes on this here episode and have you grandstanding about how Alex is the greatest thing in sliced bread and nobody can not like him and his stock is on the rise and he's fantastic, and you're just throwing him away like that with no discussion about Albon.
I love him.
I would like to jump in, and I will say that, and I'm going to go for both of you here. Brian, I'm going to accept your proposal of putting Max alongside Piastri. Rob, based purely on this, and based purely on the last time that Max and Albon shared a team together, I don't think it will work, and therefore, is much. I know.
Yet again, we're now trampling all over Albon's dreams and hopes.
No.
But, okay.
We have a big bag of money. We just didn't approach him with any. If he'd like to be our test and reserve driver, he's always got a spot.
At this moment in time, if you set a team up, you would put Albon above Piastri in this team all day long, based on form.
But I agree with you. If we are
together.
taking Max, if we're taking Max, I know we can't bring Albon along for the party, so I'm not going to win my smooth operator argument, and I'm okay with that. In fact, I was okay with it the moment I opened my mouth to say it. So if we are taking Max, I will begrudgingly accept that Albon can't come along to the party.
What is your reason for Carlos? The entire field to choose from, you've gone for Sainz. Why? I'm confused.
I just think that he has. I think they're the wrong way around in that team right now. I don't understand the Charles love-in. I actually don't think Charles is that fantastic a driver. Every time that the Ferrari is not in its absolute sweet spot, he doesn't seem to be able to get a tune out of it. He's the first one to start moaning that something's wrong or whatever. Whereas Carlos always seems to be more dogged, more of a fighter, and he's going to try to get that thing around the track. And I think he's actually the better driver out of the two. So if I'm putting Carlos as a number one, I didn't go for Lewis because of the obvious reasons. Like you say, I think he's going to retire any minute. Max, I just decided not to go for the obvious one more than anything, really. And because I wanted a teammate that might actually get along with him. In hindsight, the best thing might have been the Lando and Max option that Brian put forward. But if we're going Piastri and Max, I can live with that.
But if we agreed that you can't have two number ones or two people who are fighting and arguing for that, Lando I think has the talent to fight and argue for that. He's been the number one at McLaren. Zach Brown has run around and punched so many people on the shoulder strongly, excited about whatever Lando's done every race. He just walked around punching everyone.
Oh, no, sorry. I thought the big high-five celebrations after the
they were. But then,
did
you see, after he was done, he started punching people on the shoulder of enthusiasm. I don't think anyone at McLaren can use their left arms. And so... I look at it, and I think it would be a great team in terms of personality. I would give it a year until Lando's like, no, you got to develop this car for me. I want less, understeer. I want the opposite of this, and they start arguing. I like Paul's point. I think Oscar's incredibly talented, but willing to continue to develop and learn from the number one driver. And Max, he's going to be around for as long as we keep paying him.
So basically, out of all of this, in summary, is that the only thing I've really managed to do is get Gunther in as assistant. That's pretty much it, right? I
mean, I don't want to point out your failings, but yeah.
I think we're being really harsh on Albon, but I just think there's so much I'm going to say negative issues. I don't think it was negative between Max and Albon whatsoever, but I just think that sort of already happened. You know what I mean? That they've been teammates and Albon struggled next to Max, and I don't know. Ironically, I'd love to see Albon in a Red Bull now. I think he would be a little bit different with Max. So, Rob,
then,
I'm not.
let's go for it. Let's say that the team spirit that the dirty side will foster will be able to not paper over, but will fully rectify any past relationship issues, and we'll go Max and Albon with Toto and Gunther with an amazing black and white livery soon to be designed and put out on the tinterweb by yours truly. Sold.
I mean, it's up to Paul.
If you is
I was good with Piastri.
Come on, because we got to do a Hungary preview here. So.
Yeah, Albon.
All right.
Okay, there it is. Team Dream Team. Team Dream Team Dirty Side. Whatever. There will be an image for it out soon.
It's a good thing you only talk for a living here at the Dirty Side.
I don't really, do I? We don't get paid for this.
No, we just spend our own money to make it happen.
Right. Okay. Enough of those shenanigans. So you will be hopping on a plane, I guess, soon, Paul. Midweek next week, early next week, to head over to Hungary?
Wednesday, and then straight into Guns N' Roses. We're playing on Wednesday night in Budapest, and then once that's done, I into race mode. So
if you can, you already got Duff to do a Dirty Side shout. If you want to get Slash to do a little intro for us, that'd be much appreciated. But right, anyway, Hungary. So the Hungaroring, 70 laps of a 2.722 mile circuit. I didn't know this until I started looking at the Bible of information, which is Wikipedia, that it's nicknamed Monaco without barriers because overtakes tend to be fewer and far between because the dry, dusty conditions coupled with a twisted, bumpy track make overtakes a rarity. When I think about Hungary, I don't think of a boring race, but what do you reckon, Paul?
Yeah, it is a little bit. You've got the main straight, which is really the end of there is going to be your most obvious overtaking space. Apart from that, yeah, you're struggling.
Okay. Well, apparently it splits drivers down the middle. Some of them absolutely rave about it, and the rest of them hate it. It's the Marmite of tracks for the drivers, really, by the looks of things.
That's not on my list of things to try.
It's been on the track for 37 years after opening in 86, and it waited 20 years for its first wet race because it's normally a very hot, dry environment. Its first wet race in 2006. We had the horrible moment in 2009 when Button's spring came off his car and hit Massa in the head, and he went off unconscious into the tyre barrier.
Barrichello.
Was it Barrichello, was it?
It was Barrichello. Yeah,
well, you might want to go and edit. We'll go and edit the Wikipedia page.
I don't know why Rob uses Wikipedia for his facts. Every week I find a problem. This time it's the wrong driver.
Stats
F1, my man.
I create. Oh, whoa! Hang on. You corrected them last week when I was right because you smushed together the Austrian GP and the Styrian GP. I took the facts from the Austrian GP page, and then you tried to make out they were wrong, which you later admitted that I was right. So
same track, man.
But we weren't doing track stats; we were doing Austrian GP stats. Anyway, we had the. I'm sorry, Paul, but this has to come up. 2021, Valtteri went bowling and took out half the grid at the start of the race.
What a job! What a job he did.
It was basically a strike.
If he didn't do that, we wouldn't be talking about the end of the season because Red Bull would have won it before Abu Dhabi. So, 3 cheers for Valtteri.
Always.
And then after the mayhem, we had the restart, which is still the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. Where because of the conditions and everything drying, Lewis didn't want to give up track position and took his spot up at the start of the grid, and everyone else bailed and went and got slicks. I think. Oh no, Paul's waving his finger. I got this wrong.
No, you haven't got it wrong. So what happens in Formula One is your garage position is defined by where you finish in the championship the year before. So because Mercedes were champions, they're the first pit box you come into. I've explained pit stops before. You can't release your car into the fast lane until there's a suitable gap. So what you would have had on the formation lap is Lewis would have come into the pit lane, stopped in a box, but there wouldn't have been a gap for him to leave until the last car was gone past, because everyone on a formation that's going to be nose to nose. So no matter what happened, Lewis would have been last coming out that pit lane. They wouldn't have been able to release the car. It would have been unsafe release. So by starting on the grid, actually, it was devil's advocate. You either try and get around as quick as you can, box, hopefully not lose too much, then come out, or you box and come out last. So yeah, it was one of those situations where he was knackered either way.
This is The More You Know, sponsored by The Dirty Side. Blew my mind. You just blew my... Because it makes sense what you said, which is a rarity for either of the people talking on this podcast to do.
Well, all three of us.
Yeah, exactly. I'll throw you in too. But watching that, I thought it was just crazy that he was out there. But you're right. First stop, everyone's on a formation lap. They're all going to be just rolling by. He's got to wait. He'd be done with the pit stop waiting so he doesn't get an unsafe release. 2021 Hungary explained.
Yeah.
Rob, keep going. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, Paul, cover your ears because this might be a little bit too close to home for the last week. But Vettel got disqualified for having a lack of a fuel sample because there wasn't enough fuel in the car, which may be a bit too close to the bone to Silverstone. It robbed him of second position, but Ocon won the race. It had 6 DNFs as well as that disqualification. So 7 cars didn't finish, and Ocon got a win. Happy days.
Part of that race that I go back and watch. Just as a fan who doesn't really understand all this stuff all the time, as evidenced by the pit stop discussion, I actually thought Lewis's attack on Fernando and Fernando's defense when he was in the Alpine was excellent. And it was, what was it, like 4 or 5 laps where he just continued and Lewis would set up moves, turns in advance, and Fernando's like, oh, I know what you're doing, my friend. And he would kind of just move that Alpine over into the way of everything Lewis was trying to do. And I get it's a little harder to overtake, but that Mercedes that year, 21, was way faster than the Alpine or Renault or whatever it was back then. And so to me, watching that defense that allowed Esteban to hold up, because everyone says the time, Lewis might have caught up to Seb and Ocon.
He absolutely was going to catch him. He just needed to clear Alonso within that lap.
Yeah, exactly that. Alonso, that was a amazing drive, and he actually sacrificed his own position for the team's win. And people always say Alonso didn't care about teams, or he had this negative towards teams, so on and so forth. He's a proper team player, and you got to bear in mind he then dumped Alpine a couple of years later. But no, his defense to hold Lewis up purely gave them their win, and Ocon his first win. So Ocon always, I love Esteban. He's a great guy. I speak to him a lot, and he always says his first win is only because of Alonso.
So if anyone's
Lewis got by now.
Yeah, if anyone's newer, go watch that 2021 Hungary and watch for that to happen about 2/3 into the race. It is just magnificent.
Best bits of last year really was Max's charge. Had power issues in qualifying that saw him start 10th, and that was just a kind of a hold my beer moment. I'll show you what I've got, and just went on a charge through the field and won the race with Lewis and George on the podium behind them. So I can't see anything beyond a Max win again this time, unless something falls off the car. But reliability seems to be, everyone's cars seem bulletproof this year, unless you don't put enough fuel in. And I don't know what we're seeing for the podium here, guys. Let's go for an early prediction. I went first last time. I almost nailed it for Silverstone when I said Max and 2 Brits on the pole. On the podium. I just picked Lewis and George. I didn't see Lando sneaking up on the outside. So, as you're our guest, we'll make you go for the prediction first.
Sorry.
Paul?
Well, it's really, you just mentioned about there are no DNFs. And one thing with this year is the cars have got so much grip. The cars they're so tight. That's why you're not seeing any real impact between drivers. So you're getting a mix of no technical DNFs and no crashes. So it's very rare to have a driver not finish a race. But yeah, that explains that. As for podium, Perez, Verstappen.
Danny
No way. Anyway, Danny Rick. Perez, Verstappen. I'm actually going to go for Lewis.
Are these in order of steps or just the podium as a whole?
Yeah. Sergio
so
wins.
See,
wow.
So Sergio so far has only won when Max has had problems or failed. It wasn't. Did he fail to finish, or did he just finish way down?
No,
Because
in
of
Baku,
issues
he
in
got caught
qualifying,
by
but-
the VSC before the safety car, so he got hosed
That's
by
right.
that.
Yeah. Okay, that's a big shout out from Paul there. What you got, Brian?
Oh boy. I'm gonna have to say top step is Max Verstappen, and I'm keep saying that till it doesn't happen at this point. And that almost rhymed, by the way. So I'm going with Max on my top step of the podium, and then after that, I'm gonna buy some of the hype of McLaren, and I know it's a different track, and I know it's not all high-speed stuff, and I recognize that. And Rob, you've explained ad nauseum the problems they've had with the car and how it works. The only thing that's more annoying from you is your DRS rants. So I'm still going with Lando on the podium, and I'm also putting Lewis on the podium as well. So I got Max and two Brits again, but swap out. No, actually the same. So I have the same podium. I'm rerunning the Silverstone
well
podium.
done.
It took me a second. My brain wasn't working, but yeah, no, I'm rerunning Silverstone.
Okay, so I'm not because of all the reasons they mentioned about McLaren not being so good in those medium speed corners, which Hungary's full of. So I'm going to say, unfortunately, they're going to get swallowed back into the pack a little bit, and I'll go. And the cars that weren't so good in Silverstone, I think, are going to come back on the charge again. So I'll go Max, Fernando, Lewis.
Oh, okay.
Oof. So we'll have to find out and see who gets the closest. We'll document this. It will go down, and we'll follow up on it to see who got the closest when we actually find out.
Why don't we just go like $5 bet? You guys can put it on.
Done.
We go $5 each on our podiums.
Done.
Yeah. Do it.
And then we'll donate the money to a charity of.
There won't be,
No, there won't be.
there won't be any winners. So let's not get any charities' hopes up that they've actually got any money coming their way. So, but if we did happen to win, then yes, we will.
I wish I could change it now. I think the dirty side car is going to win, and it's going to be Max Penfolds. Very nice. They should sponsor us. Not a sponsor yet, Penfolds. I'm a big Penfolds fan. I got some bottles over there.
For anybody who's listening along here and has no clue what just happened, then Brian is reacting to Paul holding up a bottle of wine. Otherwise, he's throwing in, especially for people from the UK, he's randomly naming Danger Mouse's sidekick. So anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just saying, if we did win, then we need to donate to a sponsor, to like a charity. And my charity was Penfolds red wine from Australia. There are other red wines available, but that was just my charity I like to donate to. But yeah, anyway, other charities are available.
So, Paul, this is kind of where we normally ended. Would you like to say thanks to everyone for listening and tune in next week?
Yeah, look, Budapest is going to be a great race. But yeah, thanks for listening. See you next week. We'll see what fun brings.